You know, most trucking podcasts spend a lot of time talking about the visible parts of this industry. The trucks, the chrome, the horsepower, the weather, the breakdowns, the truck stops, the miles. But we're not like every other trucking podcast here at Always Pneumatic, Never Static. There's another side to trucking that most drivers only think about when something goes wrong, and that's the paperwork. And before you roll your eyes and think today's episode is about forms and filing cabinets, let me tell you something right now. This conversation changed the way I look at the entire backside of this industry, because every load tells a story. A driver stuck at a plant for 5 hours because of low PSI restriction, a trailer pushing product 8 stories into a building, a broken valve, a plugged line, a deadhead route, a missed note that can change a paycheck. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos is somebody trying to piece the whole thing together from a few handwritten notes on a trip sheet. Today's guest is one of those people. Laura Holstein is Bulk's office manager in Plain City, but after this conversation, I think you'll realize she's also part detective, part teacher, part counselor, part problem solver, and maybe most importantly, one of the people making sure drivers get paid correctly for the work they actually did the first time. She's been with Bulk on and off since the year 2000, and if there's one thing that became crystal clear while talking to her, it's this. The best companies aren't built on trucks. They're built on people who care enough to get the details right. This is one of my favorite employee spotlight conversations we've done so far. Office manager Laura Holstein, right now on Always Pneumatic, Never Static.
You are listening to Always Pneumatic, Never Static, the totally pressurized podcast brought to you by Bulk Transit, where we keep the lines clear, the tanks empty, and the conversation anything but dry. Whether you're running powder, pellets, or anything in between, pull up a seat, crack the windows, and let's hit it.
How's it going out there, Bulk and Spur? Welcome in to this episode of Always Pneumatic, Never Static. I'm your host, Marcus. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Podcast.bulktransit.com is our website. You want to head over there and bookmark that so you get every single episode right when it comes out without having to open up another app. It's such a great website. Shout out to my guy Tyler for building it and maintaining it. There's plenty of stuff up there. You can take a quiz associated with every single episode after the episode airs, just to test your mettle a little bit, and we will use those quizzes as entries later on down the line in the future. We'll be doing another giveaway here, so I always want to mention that off the top of the episode, just so you guys go and get that website bookmarked now so you can get to it easily when it's time for us to give away some of the good stuff. Once again, podcast.bulktransit.com. Now, today's episode is another employee spotlight, and these are some of my favorite episodes to record. Why? Well, it's because I get such good insight into why everybody loves working for Bulk and Spur. It really is constantly, these episodes are a peek behind the curtain. This takes a village. You hear me say that all the time. There's so many hands involved in making this company run well. And some of the times, those hands just don't get appreciated like they should. Well, we've got this platform, so we might as well bring them in here and appreciate them. And today's guest, Office manager Laura Holstein, she's one of those people that really can take... if you were to take a puzzle, a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle in a box and throw it into the air and punt it into the sky, I'm convinced after this episode that before the 1,000th piece hit the ground, Laura would have that puzzle piece together and at least laid out so that we could put it together immediately if she hadn't already put it together before it hit the ground. That's the type of person we're dealing with today. It was hard for me to even wrap my head around some of the order that she has to bring to chaos. And I'll tell you right now, that's the meat of today's episode. Everything about this interview that you're about to hear has its place here in the well-oiled machine that is Bulk and Spur. So without any more chin-wagging of my own, I am going to bring Laura in here and get this episode started because, wow, stay tuned afterwards for the outro. You and I are going to chat again real quick about exactly what we just heard. And listen, I'm talking to you from the future right now. I've already recorded this interview. You're going to want to strap in for it. All right, welcome back in here to Always Pneumatic, Never Static. Let's get our guest here in the room today because a very important guest is joining us for our employee spotlight today. And what I would say about this person, and I was fortunate enough to get to sit down in the same room with her and have a nice conversation when I was out in Plain City. This next guest is a pro at translating chaos into clarity. She's one of the people making sure drivers actually get paid correctly, customers are getting billed correctly, and the company doesn't lose money just because somebody forgot one tiny detail at 2:30 in the morning at a dusty factory. Our guest today is Office Manager Laura Holstein. Laura, thank you so much for the time today. You've got your hands in everything here as far as Bulk and Spur is concerned, so even getting this time with you today I know is a big deal for us. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me, Marcus. I'm excited.
I am too. And one of the things I want to talk about just jumping in here is kind of your history with the company, because we can draw a line all the way back to, and now in my notes, I said the year 2000, the turn of the millennium here. So walk us through your career path with Bulk and Spur from the very beginning, Laura.
Okay. Well, from the first, back in 2000, I was just looking for something different, and I applied for an advertisement that I saw for Bulk Transit. They were looking for a payables person, and I had experience, so I thought, well, I could try doing that and see what kind of company it is, because normally I tend to grow pretty fast with the company. So I didn't hear anything from them, and I had heard from somebody else, so I went ahead and accepted a different position. And then after a couple of months, I received a phone call from Brian, and he actually wanted to bring me in for an interview. He did tell me that the position that I applied for, he and the family thought I was overqualified for. But now they had a different position that was right up my alley, and if I would come in and talk with them. So I agreed, and I met with him, and at the end of that conversation, he said he would talk with the family and get back with me. And I think it was like the next day, he called me and said, "Would you be willing to come back and interview with me and my family?" And I'm just a small girl from Southside Chicago. I thought, interview with the family. Oh my gosh.
Right. Am I going to have to kiss a ring or something? What's going on here?
Right, exactly. What am I being initiated into? So we scheduled for an evening that I could come in after my current position, and lo and behold, I met with the entire family. Wolf was there, his wife Gloria was there, Brian, Brad, Andrea, and Brad's dog, Max.
Oh, yeah.
So I got everybody's seal of approval that day, and I was brought on as the payroll and billing manager back in 2000. I was here for 16 years. I loved it. This is by far my most favorite adult position. But unfortunately, in 2016, something else had landed in my lap, and I had a few things that I needed to clear up at home and take care of. So I took the opportunity to go on to a new venture. I spent many years in insurance, and then they were phasing out the position. Commercial lines underwriter did not sound appealing. It sounded like a snooze fest. So I thought, well, I'll look for something else. And that's when I went and I did 2 years with the Department of Defense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then, with that stint, I had heard from a friend that I had heard from in the past that said, "Hey, Bulk might be interested in talking to you again." And, each time they nudged me over the years, I would just comment, no, that would be like going backwards. But I did miss it. I missed the family. I missed everybody. The entire 10 years that I was gone, 9.5 years, absolutely missed everybody. So this time around, when I was, kind of finding myself a little bit homesick, I texted Brian And by now I had a new last name to go with it. So I was like, this is Laura Holstein, AKA Laura, and my previous name. And I heard, that you might be interested in talking with me. And he immediately texted me back and said that he was out of the country on vacation and how would 4 o'clock next Wednesday work. And I told him that was fine. And by 4 o'clock the following Wednesday, my phone was ringing, and we had an amazing conversation. I came into the office. I met with him and Andrea, and I'm just so blessed to be back. Is the whole thing. I love what I do. I love who I do it with and who I do it for, and I like doing it well.
You're not the first person to tell a story about Brian putting in a phone call. And one thing I can say, having sat in the same room with the guy, having had plenty of conversations at this point, I don't know if it's possible to say no to Brian. That man is one of the friendliest, nicest guys, and Andrea too, and Brad. I mean, the whole family. I didn't get to meet Dad, unfortunately, but I've heard so many things, and just hearing you talk about it, that's really part of what Bulk and Spur offer. As we talk about compensation and benefits all the time, Laura, but some of the unsaid things and the things that don't show up on paper and don't show up on a paycheck can be so valuable to us as people. And what you're speaking of right now is something that I see just running through Bulk and Spur, like water flowing down a river. It's just everybody is happy. Everybody loves the people that they work with, and they love to work very hard for the DeWolf family. And I think that's almost irreplaceable. You said this is your favorite adult job. Have you ever felt like that any place else that you've been, that connection with the people running the show?
No, never. And it's not that I'm difficult to get along with or anything, but this is just these people are at their core bulk transit. They do everything knowing how it affects them and how it affects us as employees. That's how they base their decisions. They're kind and they're caring and they're loving. I've heard on numerous of your other podcasts and stuff, everybody boasting about them. It's true. They really care. I'm not just employee number, blah, blah, blah. I can walk into Brian's office, Andrew's office, Brad's office anytime, any day, close the door, sit down, and just speak my piece. Whether it's something that they want to hear or not, they hear me out. We go back and forth with a plan. They're just down to earth people that really care.
They really are. You hear open door policy with a lot of different managers or ownership, and that is more lip service than it is real. I waltzed into Brian's office. I waltzed into Andrew's office. I was only there for 3 days, and I felt like I had been there for 5 years with the access that they gave me and the willingness that they had to just let you pop in and ask a few questions. That's not common in our industry, Laura. It's that you've worked in and outside of it for so long. It's not common in many industries at all. But to see it and to hear it so many times on this podcast, like you're saying, I don't pull that stuff out of people. I just allow them to speak to their own experience, and that's what everybody brings me. And man, we'll always make room for it here.
It's so down to the core that it's their families and their children and everything. When they rehired me in December of 24, by the end of January of 25, we were having our first annual managers meeting. And at the dinners Friday and Saturday night, the families of the owners and families of, like our IT guy and stuff, their spouses were seeking me out and thanking me for coming back. And welcoming me back. I mean, I left in tears that night after the meetings and stuff. They're just great people.
They really are. We should all be so lucky to work for a company like that, because it really does have an impact when you go home. I mean, listen, Laura, I've heard a lot of stories of people leaving work in tears, but none of them have been happy stories like yours was. So
exactly.
That says a lot. I want to ask you real quick before we kind of dive into what the office manager position is really all about, because that's a deep pool that we'll jump in. But talk to me about Bulk back in 2000 when you started, and that stretch from 2016, fast forwarding to now 2026, and your current tenure from 24 to 26. What changed about the company? Obviously, the culture didn't change. Was there any big differences that you noticed, either with the company itself and the growth that it had experienced over the time you were gone, or the industry itself? What were some of the biggest differences you saw between 2016 and coming back in 2024?
So we implemented a lot of things within my first 16 years. I think I was here probably 6 months or something, and Brian called me down to his office because I was 2 miles down the road at a different location with the billing staff. Because we didn't have this beautiful office building built at the time. But he called me down to talk one evening, and he mentioned that with Y2K back in 2000, they had purchased a product to prepare just in case, we woke up Y2K morning and everything was down, things weren't working, that sort of thing. They had purchased a product that they left on the shelf. They got it open and they started it. They had our core files built, and it was just kind of waiting there. And then when Y2K didn't happen, they didn't finish implementing it. But he asked me, he's like, I really think you're the person who could help us implement this project. And I was like, give me the box, Brian, just hand it over. And that started us down a path of so many great things. We've always been an iSeries based software system, which I love, but we are starting to dabble with some online, a new TMS system and stuff, which I'm so excited to get going, because this will be the second transition that I have helped with. And we kind of joked around when I came in and talked with Brian and Andrea at my interview, that I got them onto the system that we're using now, and now they want me to get them onto another new system.
You're the person, right?
And that's the kind of thing that I love doing. I love the research. I love digging deep. Like, why is this not working? Everything about this says that it should find X, and it's not finding X. And I will, I'll just put heads down and figure it out until I find it. So we got up on the new platform, and this thing has been a dinosaur. But it's been a rock solid dinosaur. The only reason we're trying to move away from it is they no longer support it. And we
Yep.
need something more new age and modern. Everyone these days, they want the point and click environment. And in iSeries, you don't necessarily get a point and click, you get a menu option. You take option 16 from your keyboard instead of pointing and clicking at option 16 that just means dispatch. It's just a different way of looking at it. But a lot of times it's the iSeries that probably is working in the background, and you're just looking at a GUI overlay system.
Gotcha.
But
So it's the technology is the biggest part, I think, of what I'm taking from you here.
It really is. So we got up and running on that. Then our next goal was to implement. It wasn't e-logs back then, but it was communication between the truck and dispatch and the mechanics. Like, we had an onboard system that would notify us of hard brakes. If they slammed on the brakes one morning or something. I believe it also notified us of the engine temperature and the oil level and different things like that. So it was a great monitoring system that then we could also use for communication back and forth from the driver. So the driver could input that he's arrived at the shipper. And then he would input when he departs from the shipper. And then that all integrated into our TMS system. And it started the process of the paperwork to where it automated things. We were no longer waiting for the trip sheet to come in, which sometimes, back in 2000, early 2000s, it would be snail mail with some of these drivers.
Right.
And we try to produce a weekly payroll. So, it helped leapfrog us ahead into getting paperwork a little bit quicker, or at least getting the data into the software quicker. And then we were just waiting on the paperwork. And when the paperwork came in, by then it was typically ready to come to my team. My team would, back in the day, we had a dot matrix printer that would print on that old green bar paper, the green and white lined paper. That was,
Tractor feed?
Yeah, it was like 18 inches wide and stuff. And
Yep.
it was probably all of 2.5, 3 inches thick. And my staff would sort through that looking for a shipper, a consignee, and a bill-to combination pertaining to that load. And they had to match commodity, if it was fly ash or if it was lime. And then they would
Right.
write the code on the bottom of the trip sheet. In doing this, they would also be looking at all of the factors of the driver's trip sheet. They would mark whether or not we're going to bill for a vac, a scale, a wash. They would look at the driver's routing information for deadhead and calculate that. And they would basically write everything on the trip sheet and then hand it to another person in my office who would then translate that and key it into the AS400. Then we would print bills based on what that person had keyed. That keying encompassed what we were billing and what we were paying the driver. So I am always telling people that our billing drives our payroll.
Mm-hmm.
So then we would print the invoices, and then we would audit every single piece of paper. From the list bill that printed to the invoice that printed, then the backup documentations, a copy of the trip sheet, copy of the bill of lading. We would audit over 1,000 invoices a week. Then one of us would bring them down here 2 miles down the road to this office where we had the postage machine. And, we would fold them up and put them in envelopes, and we'd had stickers with the, who to mail it to, and they would weigh it down here and put it out in the mail, and then, we would just wait for the check to be issued. These days,
Wow.
fast forward, we barely see any paperwork paper-wise. It's all scanned to us, and as soon as it's scanned in, we can start working it. We do the same things. We look at it. We play the matching game is what I call it. We have the trip sheet on one monitor. We have the AS400 on another monitor. And we start going back and forth, auditing the driver, the bill of lading, the weight, the routing information, the truck number, the trailer number, all the important things. And the more accurate that paperwork, that trip sheet is completed, and the more accurate their attachments are of their bill of ladings, their scale tickets, if there was a wash ticket and things like that, that's the more accurate that we can produce an invoice the first time around. If they leave something out, then if we know that maybe something is missing, we can set it aside, and then we can start making phone calls or sending emails and doing the research to get it. But if we have everything that we need, we're able to invoice it and poof, get it done and pushed it on. And then the invoices, instead of us mailing them and paper auditing and everything, they auto email from a program.
That's great.
So our postage amount has significantly decreased.
I bet. I mean, just the cost of postage alone was probably crazy. And I will say this right now. You're looking at the video of me. For those of you that are just listening to this, we're on a video chat right now. And I want to tell you, I'm a duck on the pond, because from the shoulders up where Laura can see me, I'm calm, cool, and collected. But listening to you talk about the organization that must have had to be involved back when you first started, all the auditing, all the matching, all that paperwork, my legs were going 1,000,000 miles an hour because it was just driving my ADHD crazy, Laura. And there's something else that I want to touch on too. We could very easily have drivers out there listening to this right now that were either very, very young or not born yet when Y2K was a thing. So just to catch you young bucks up here, Y2K was a scare that they thought, because they only programmed 2 numbers for the year in the computer software, i.e. 98, 99. It didn't say 1999. There was a scare, if I remember correctly, Laura, that when the clock turned over on the year 2000, that those computer clocks were going to reset to 00, and it was going to shut the whole system down because the computers were going to think that they hadn't been born yet, essentially,
Right.
and that the technology hadn't evolved yet. So people were pulling their hair out for Y2K. It's kind of something that's almost lost to time now because it was 8 to 12 months of everybody worrying about it, and then we woke up on January 1st and everybody's computer still worked fine,
Right.
despite how many millions of dollars were probably spent in preparation for such a thing. So, I think it highlights how much different technology is just 26 short years later than it was back there when you first started with bulk, Laura.
Right. Yeah, because seriously, you had people in both sides of the camp. Some were like, "Oh, it's going to be just fine," and then you had other people like, "No, the grocery stores are going to be closed. There's not going to be any electric. How will we do this? How will we do that?" That was Y2K. That was our pre-COVID cursor, right?
Yes, yes. Another one that kind of did that to us was in 2012 when they thought the Mayan calendar was going to end and the waves were just going to come over the mountains and we were all going to be swept away to sea.
Yeah.
Similar to where you had people on both sides of the fence saying, I think you haven't thought this through well enough, and you had people whose bunkers were fully stocked. And fortunately, for Y2K at least, it didn't mess up your guys' system that you had so well dialed at that point in time.
Right.
But it sounds like now, at first, I want to say the fact that you've got such a nice head of hair left after dealing with all of that in the early 2000s is kind of a miracle, Laura, because I'm going bald just thinking about it. I mean, that must have been an absolute pressure cooker every single week with the volume that you guys were facing.
Yeah, the volume is a lot. And we really strive to have everybody's paycheck right the first time around. But we make mistakes. And if we do, just let us know. We have a process, a payroll discrepancy form that if you fill that out, turn it into your terminal. This way, something happened. The terminal knows that it happened. It comes in here. It gets divided up amongst 3 or 4 people, myself being one of them. So I actually can have my eyes on every single payroll discrepancy. So if I get a driver who calls me and says, Laura, my check has been wrong every single week for 6 months, I can pull the file and I can say, well, I see you've complained 3 times. Let's talk about the differences and things like that.
Right.
To where, we do try to keep like a checks and balance. It's a way for me to help coach and train my team. I'm not somebody who will look at my team and say, no, that's just the way we do it. I will stop and take the time and explain, this is the way we do it and this is why we do it the way we do.
For sure. This brings me to something that you said to us when we were out there in Plain City the first time we met. You said something that I wrote down and underlined in my notes a few different times, and that is, I want to feel like I was in the cab with you. Speaking to the drivers, can you walk me through that mindset a little bit? Why is it so important that you feel like you're right there in the cab with the drivers on your side of things?
It is, and I still use that to this day, Marcus. We have new hires that come in for what we call a meet and greet. And first off, I start off with there's 2 ways to not get paid. The very first way to not get paid is to not turn in any paperwork for what you did. The second way to not get paid would be to turn in paperwork, but don't put your name on it. And you would not believe how many times that happens.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just a matter of, you can tell the difference between an organized driver and maybe somebody who's a little bit newer, but everything's the same. We need the same information basically on each trip sheet. It helps make the madness and the chaos a little bit quieter when we can determine what's billable and what's payable. Because not everything is both. Sometimes we end up paying the driver and we do not bill the customer.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how much of that we do.
Sure. Can you give me an example, just a real world example of one small missing detail that could completely change the outcome or affect a driver's pay? I know that the job that they do is so involved and so detail oriented that it's something I see across the trucking industry is that paperwork tends to be the tedium of the job, and the pulling hoses and the crawling over train cars and all of the stuff that is trucking 101 type stuff. It takes so much focus that sometimes it can be a little bit hard once you get back to the paperwork time. So I'm looking for just an example here for you that the drivers can kind of relate to, that, hey, if you don't do this one little thing, we extrapolate all the way back to your paycheck, and you can see big changes here with just one tiny mistake.
Right. We have a lot of opportunities on the trip sheet itself for them to mark boxes or write comments. So, like, for example, their routing information is highly important in order for us to process their deadhead. With that being said, we still have a lot of people who think that their routing information should mimic their log. Their log is something totally different. And now that we're on e-logs and stuff, all of that is log related. Anything that you have to do for TIM and safety and your log and your e-log and, for the State Highway Patrol, that's separate. Your trip sheet tells me where you've been and what you've done. I don't need to know where you got fuel necessarily. I don't need to know when you went into the sleeper berth or, in what town you were in your sleeper berth. But at the bottom of the trip sheet, the drivers can mark if they're requesting deadhead. They can mark if they're requesting scale, if they did some interplant work, which is an hourly paid item. There's a whole section for just notes that weren't at the shipper or at the consignee. It's just, miscellaneous notes to where if they were shut down on the highway due to a fatality, 5 or 10 miles ahead of them, they can put that down. I was down for 2 hours because I-71. The more information that they can give us, the easier it is to pay them. Because I can go back and I can look on, on their truck data history as far as, were they really stuck in traffic for 2 hours. So if they tell me like where and the times, and then their terminal manager signs off on it and gives us their approval and stuff, that's how to get paid for everything that you do, is to remember to request pay for it. And if you're not sure, you can mark the box. If you're not sure if it pays deadhead or not, by marking the box, we'll run the deadhead. And if it doesn't pay, we just won't pay it. And if you call and ask, hey, I thought this should have been had deadhead on it, I'll explain how deadhead works to them. And we'll walk through it while the driver's on the phone with me. And we will either come up with the exact same answer that my team did and the deadhead wasn't valid, or I'll see where possibly my team made a mistake and picked the wrong county code. You'd not believe how many New Albany, Ohios we have, and different things like that. So it's as easy as that.
So it's sort of, and maybe the drivers don't always think about it like this, but from your end, that trip sheet is sort of storytelling from the driver's end of things.
It is. And I do tell them, because I'm not in the truck, when you get finished at the loading site or at the unloading site, get in the truck, grab your clipboard and start writing a story. And I even joke around with them. I tell them, I say, you can look in your passenger and say, hey, Laura, watch this, and just write exactly what happened. Be kind, be courteous, because the trip sheet does go with the invoice to the customer. So if you're having problems with somebody at that site, that's a conversation for you and your terminal manager or your terminal staff, and they can help try to rectify it or, try to put a squash to it.
Sure.
I don't want you getting too emotional on the trip sheet. I know things happen, and I know that might be part of your reasoning. But what I try to get at is, look, if somebody just ghosted you, if the person, told you what silo to hook up to, and then they ghosted you, they sat on their phone, I don't need to know what all they did. I just need to know shipper did not come back to release me.
Right.
Or I was 3 hours waiting for, the shipper to come back, or I was 2 hours waiting for my seals to seal the load, because for different loads we do seal them. Just
Right.
give me the specifics. Leave the emotion out of it. That's a conversation to have with your terminal manager. You can call and tell me about it. There's not a lot I can do, but the terminal manager should be working with the shippers and the consignees to try to mitigate some of those obstacles.
Sure. You told us a story when we were out there in Plain City about a driver that had a 5-hour unload, somewhere around a 5-hour unload, because the PSI restriction at the customer was very low. I think if I remember correctly, it was something like 4 PSI or something. And this driver just kind of took it on the chin and thought, well, this is just part of the job, and didn't note that had happened. And there was a pay discrepancy after that because, hey, that's part of the job, right? 5-hour unload or 5-minute unload, you're still getting something for that. And that's a very important detail that you need to know, correct? Can you catch me up on that story a little bit and just kind of talk through?
Sure can, Marcus. Thank you. If they're instructed when they get to a consignee to unload at a low PSI, like for example, the 4 PSI that you mentioned, that is extremely low. I think we can typically unload most of our products somewhere around 10 to 12 PSI. So imagine you're blowing product through a straw. And, imagine there's a child blowing through a straw and then an adult blowing through the straw. Also, depending upon what you're trying to push through that straw, may clog up on you.
Yep.
There's fly ash loads and there's dust loads and things like that, or chunky loads that, the faster you try to push it out the hole, it's just going to clog up on you. And you're better off, slow and steady wins the race. They've always told us that since school. And it's the truth with a lot of these products. If you're restricted to a low PSI, you really just need to tell us, I was restricted to 4 PSI. Some loads are 6 PSI. And then that tells me that it's going to take you, if it's unloading, your base pay is based on 1 hour at the shipper, 2 hours at the consignee. So 4 PSI, you're going to take longer than 2 hours to blow off 40,000 pounds. Okay. There's other examples where you hook your line to a line that's laying there, but then that line goes somewhere along the ground, up over a rail car and out who knows how many, 80 or 120 feet to a silo that you don't even see where you're unloading into. That to me is a long blow or a long push. And that's going to take a while. If you're trying to move that product from your trailer another 120 foot and not just 20 foot away from your trailer, that's going to take a little bit longer. So it's the details that we need for that. Because me and my staff and the folks that are paying the invoices, they typically are not at the plants. They're not there seeing the obstacles that we come up against. I had one driver that he was unloading at a place and he forgot to write down his unloading detention time. And I can't remember if it was the 5-hour one or more, but he was literally pushing product from his trailer up 8 stories, 8
Oh,
flights
wow.
into an open window that I don't know, maybe then they were, unloading it into Gaylord boxes up there, but he was going up 8 flights. That's a long, hard push. Gravity, it
Right.
comes into play,
Yeah.
And then there's other places that we'll be at that I've heard that we can be using our blower to offload our product, but then on the receiver's end, they are also using something on their end to suck the product off.
Okay.
So
So
that
that'll
to
speed
me
things up.
means that, this is a difficult product, or if it's a difficult line. There's all sorts of different reasons. And then we all have hoses and connections and valves and things like that. So if something breaks while the driver is unloading or loading, whose thing was it that broke? Was it ours? Was it the shipper? Was it the consignee? We need to know, because then that tells us whether or not it's billable. If it was our trailer that broke, I certainly do not want to penalize the customer for that, but I don't want to penalize the driver either. So we'll pay the driver and not bill for it as long as we have the information we need.
Details,
Yeah.
details. And this is why I said turning chaos into clarity, because if all this stuff comes at you out of a fire hose, it is pure chaos. But going through the Laura Holstein filter, it comes out very clear and legible, if you will. I think this is so cool. I can't wrap my head around the organization that you must have to have in your brain to keep all this straight, Laura, but that's where the experience comes in. You've got a lot of time behind the wheel, figuratively speaking here, and I think it shows. I mean, you're very confident. I've seen some office managers that if their hair was virtually on fire all the time, they would probably be more comfortable than they were when I talked to them. I don't get that from you at all. And what I find when I hear you talk, you mentioned it earlier, you talked about training and teaching, and you seem big on those, but specifically the why behind it. Have you found that your team and also the drivers perform better when they really understand the reasoning behind all of this organization and all of these details?
I really do. And I try to model my life based on be the person that you needed. If you ever stop and think about a time in your life, we all go through seasons, but think about a season that you might have been in and think about who showed up for you. Okay. Who helped you through that?
Mhm.
If anything, I guess I consider myself, I don't know, I'm probably ADHD as well, but I'm adaptable. I can be diversified and I can be a multi-purpose player to where I really truly believe that managers manage people and processes and leaders create a safe learning environment. And I want my
Yeah.
team to have a safe learning environment where they can come in, close my door, sit down and say, Laura, I just don't understand how to run Deadhead. How did you get the number that you got? Because I'm getting something totally different. And we can sit down and we can have a conversation about it. When the driver calls me and says, Laura, I didn't get Deadhead or I don't understand my per diem, I like to be able to dissect it and break it down. Um, and, hopefully convey the information that they need by the end of the conversation so that they feel more confident in what they were paid.
Boy, it's times like this, hearing you say things like that I wish you were my math tutor all the way through high school and college, because I never had somebody that could sit down and help me work it out and tell me why and explain it to me. And that's, it goes beyond just the math of everything. There's reasons that you guys do everything that you do the way that you do it. And a lot of times those reasons have years of experience stacked up behind them. And all you have to do is have somebody that's willing to explain that to you. And all of a sudden the whole picture becomes clear. There's something else that you said when we were out in Plain City that sort of ties into that. And you said that if somebody's having trouble communicating, or if somebody by nature is a bit of a poor communicator, your counter to that is to over communicate with them. As somebody that communicates on a daily basis and gets paid for it, I understand the importance of over communication and also the detractions that poor communication can bring. Talk to me a little bit about that over communication when somebody's maybe not communicating as well as what you'd hoped when they took the position or started the project.
Well, I just try to slow them down and explain to them, really what we're looking at. As far as the drivers go, their base pay is based on shipper to consignee and back to the shipper, regardless of whether they go back to the shipper or not. Their base pay is also inclusive of 1 hour at the shipper and 2 hours at the consignee. So when they put that they were at the shipper for 3 hours and they put normal load time, well, no. Normal load time is the 1 hour that is
Right.
included in your base pay. But not only that, behind the scenes, we know that, well, with that shipper, we really can't bill until after 2 hours. So if you're telling me you were there for 3 hours and you're just going to put normal load, there's something not normal about it. Normal would have been the 1 hour. So I need you to be a little bit more wordy. Give me those examples of, the low PSI or even slow moving product. When we're loading out of silo 9, I don't know necessarily that silo 9 is the furthest silo from the plant, and therefore it's the longest push from the plant, that it has to go past silos 1 through 8 to get to 9. Some of these facilities, there's silos that are stacked, one in front of the other, and you really don't know, is the product going to 1, 2, 3, 4, through 8 first and then hitting 9? Or is it coming down the left side and feeding the odd numbered silos, or vice versa, the right side of the silos?
Hmm.
So since, I don't know that for each shipper, and the people who are typically paying our invoices, at the customer side, they may not know. So the more information that they can provide us, I don't need an entire dissertation as to what happened, but just the facts, if something broke, if there was a low PSI, just provide us, what they think we need. Because trust me, Marcus, if I was at a customer unloading, and I was there for 5 hours, I would have a story to tell.
Absolutely, absolutely. It kind of, what it sounds like you're telling the drivers here is, we need you to be the purest form of Walter Cronkite that you can be. And if our younger listeners don't know who Walter Cronkite was, he's the iconic example of how news should be reported.
Yeah.
Zero spin, zero personality in it. Only the facts, followed by the next fact, followed by the next fact, and then get out. Under a beautiful mustache, if I do say so myself. But that is really, I think, at the core of what you're looking for here is any type of injection as far as how I felt this situation happened isn't really needed. It's just, what did you see? What happened? Get it down on the trip sheet.
You nailed it, Marcus. That is exactly it.
I love it. I love a big Walter Cronkite fan, if you can't tell, doing what I do, and also it's like, think about it. If a more current example fits you better, think about it as not being your Fox News or your CNN. Think about it as being just what they're reporting without all of the spin that you get. I find it funny. Fox News used to call themselves the no spin zone.
Yes.
I haven't seen no spin since Walter Cronkite left this great mortal coil. So that's a really good example. Look up some YouTube videos of the guy if you've never heard of him before. It's worth your time. And I think it'll help with this sort of painting the picture on the trip sheet.
Right.
In broadcasting, that's a line that we constantly say is, we need you to paint the picture. People aren't seeing what you're seeing, but you're telling them about it. So imagine your words painting a very clear picture of what's happening, and that's what's happening with the trip sheet.
Right. And we have some remarkable trainers out there, like Bob Fortner out in Sydney. He really, he takes it to the next level. He's like, Laura, what can I tell the drivers? I'm presenting them with how to do this and the process, and he'll call me. We'll have discussions. I have some drivers that will stop in, even if they're just here to swap out a trailer. They'll come on in, they'll sit down, we'll chat for a few minutes. We'll talk kids, grandkids, and shop, all in the same conversation. The staff that we have wants to take care of the newcomers, like when I heard your podcast with Stephanie and Jackie. Jackie is just phenomenal, for starters. And I really do hope that at some point him and Stephanie do get to meet up, because, Marcus, I got to tell you, I consider you the lettuce, okay? Lettuce brings the sandwich together. Okay. And you brought
awesome.
Stephanie and Jackie together like lettuce to a sandwich. Okay. We have drivers out there that they will get stuck. They will get plugged up. They will call each other, or they will call their terminal manager, or they'll call one of our mechanics. And there is always somebody on the other end of the phone who is willing to take the time to walk them through, even if they caused the plug up themselves. Here's how you clear it.
Right. No judgment, just let's help out here.
Exactly. I've been in your shoes. Let me help you. I'm not there, but I still want to help.
Right. I love it. This has all been so great, Laura. I can't thank you enough. And I've just got a few more things here that are a little bit more kind of fun questions, if you will, and we'll draw on the vast experience that you've had, and also I think highlight just how good you are at your job of office manager, because if you haven't figured it out yet, Laura's got it together, okay? And there's a very good reason that Bulk and Spur run like a well-oiled machine. But some fun here. What type of paperwork instantly makes you smile? Is there anything that's on that sheet that comes through that just warms your heart because you saw that the driver understood the assignment and everything is as it should be?
Yes, especially with the new drivers after they do the meet and greet, and I see the change in their paperwork, the way it comes in, the neatness. Trust me, you're not going to be able to read my signature either. But when it comes to my payroll, I do try to print my name and list my employee number as clear as possible, just to ensure that I'm the one getting paid. Because when
Right.
we have 200 drivers that we're paying, some numbers blend together, some signatures look the same. So the more clean and accurate your paperwork is, it just produces a better invoice. And when we produce a better invoice, we produce a better payroll.
There you go. And that's all part of producing the great product that Bulk is known for. And I think that's those things. That's the point. That's the reason we brought you in here, is to connect the dots today. And you just see the dots connect all the way down the line for that. Now, on the flip side, I couldn't let you out of here without asking this. Have you ever looked at some paperwork and thought, what on earth is going on?
Yes, I do not remember the driver's name, but I do believe that I called the terminal manager more than once probably, and I asked him to please ask this driver to either fill the paperwork out away from his steering wheel or turn the truck off, because trucks are like motorcycles. They jiggle, okay?
Yep.
And when you've got your paperwork on top of the steering wheel and you're writing, my writing's not all that great to begin with, but then you add the truck shaking. Um, it looked like a Tourette's person completed his paperwork 9 times out of 10. But then other times it would be clean and clear to where it's like, okay, he was at home having a cup of coffee when he did that.
Yep. I love it. I love it. On that note, you talked about working with the terminal managers. You also work with the drivers. You got a chance to make some hay here for us. Who's harder to train, terminal managers or drivers?
I think they both get a fair shake at the stick. The
Yeah.
terminal managers, they have more to digest with the software that we use, and getting the things from start to finish. But then the drivers, I just love our drivers. They're not steering wheel holders, they're not dock bumpers. I have so much respect for them. They're out getting dirty. I've heard about the flower bombs and things like
Yep.
that, and ending up with plastic in places you don't want to tell your friends about. Um, our drivers, they're not the typical, stereotypical type of driver that just goes home clean and shiny every single day, just the way they walked out the door that morning. I love that we have more female drivers involved now than we've ever had. Um, but yeah, they bring it all together. They bring it
They
home.
really do.
Yeah.
They really do. It takes a village, right?
Yes.
It definitely does to make this company run as well as and as smoothly as it does. Laura, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, sharing as much time, because with the amount of things that you deal with, taking an hour out of your day almost feels criminal on my part. But here you are with a smile on your face. Thank you so much for the time here today. We do a segment with everybody that comes on the show called Final Thoughts, and this segment is really built just for you to get anything out on the table that we might have left off that we didn't get to talk about, or it's great for shout outs. It's great for a message to the company, however you want to take it. The key is the floor is yours. Office Manager Laura Holstein joining us today on Always Pneumatic, Never Static. Thank you so much for the time once again. Final thoughts from you before we let you get back to it.
Okay, yeah, a huge thank you again to the family and to their extended family for welcoming me back. It's like I never left. I'm just so blessed to be back and to be able to do the things that I do. To my team who are learning to work with me and learning new things, learning why we decided to do things the way we did. They don't have the past 26 years experience or even that first 16 years when we were still doing it paper-wise. So they have nothing to refer it back to, but yet they're open to learning and stuff. So just please keep learning, keep asking questions. My door is always open. And then to our 12 grandkids and our one great-grandchild on the way, a shout out to you. And then a shout out to Leonard. He's my husband. He's the string to my kite. He has steady hands. He keeps me tethered. He's my gentle anchor in life.
Fantastic final thought segment from you there, Laura. Just knocked this one out of the park. Thank you so much. We will definitely be knocking on your office door because we know it's open. So we'll get you back in here again sometime soon, okay?
Yes, anytime, Marcus. Thank you.
Office manager Laura Holstein, what an awesome conversation that was. You get some real true insight into why it all works so well with that conversation. And something else that I noticed about Laura that I want to bring up here, and I've noticed it about so many people that we've done employee spotlights on, you can just tell that the dedication just bleeds through this person. They want everything to work out in the best possible way. They want all the drivers to get paid. They want everybody home safe. And when you ask them a simple one-sentence question about their job and they give you a few minutes, that's when you know that this person is dedicated. They are on a level that it takes you being on that level to be able to perform the way that they do in the face of all of the chaos that is put in front of the office manager. You know, we didn't even talk about the fact that is Laura the person that's got to go order a new box of pens? That's an office manager duty right there. There's a lot that we didn't cover that Laura is probably responsible for, which just means that we're going to get the pleasure of bringing her back on here again later on in the life of this podcast and learn even more about everything that she's got her hands in. Now, I think the biggest takeaway from today's conversation is this. The details protect the drivers. That's really what all of this boils down to when you think about it. The details protect your pay. The details protect the customer relationship, which is oh so important. The details protect the company, also a pretty big priority. And the details help the office tell the real story of what happened out there, which means you get paid for what really happened out there. Because as Laura explained today, not every unload is just normal or typical. Not every delay is visible on a trip sheet. Not every obstacle is obvious from the outside. And that's why Laura says, I want to feel like I'm sitting in the cab with you. From her seat, unless it shows on a trip sheet, it's really hard to tell that there's low PSI, a long push, a plugged line, a broken valve, a customer restriction, or a highway shutdown. But all of those things matter, and they matter big, especially when it comes to our paychecks. They only matter, though, if someone knows about them. Otherwise, they're in the ether, right? So if there's one thing to take away, again, it's probably this. Don't assume that people know what happened. Tell the story, write it down, communicate it clearly. Be Walter Cronkite. Zero spin, zero opinion, just the facts. And from everything we heard today, if you do that, Bulk's got people like Laura in place who genuinely want to get things right. And if they're not right, she wants to make them right and identify the problem and coach it up so that we don't deal with this problem a lot in the future. Huge thanks again to Laura Holstein for her time today. To get an hour of her time when she has so much on her plate, man, she talked about being blessed. I feel like I'm the one that's blessed today to get to sit down and have such an insightful conversation with her. But that's going to wrap it up for us here on this episode of Always Pneumatic, Never Static. I want to remind you one more time, our website is podcast.bulktransit.com. If you're listening to these episodes and you're going, this podcast thing is really starting to pique my fancy, I want to get on there and talk to this Marcus guy. I would love to talk to you. Maybe you just have an idea for an episode. That's fine. I take driver emails and turn them into episodes all the time. But you got to go over to the website and get in touch with me, or you can talk to one of the many drivers or the many office staff members out there that have my phone number and my email. I am happy for them to give it to you. They all know that. You guys can get in touch with me and get on this podcast. Become a part of it. Have some fun with us in here. You know, a lot of these conversations, we do take them pretty seriously, but you'll notice that there's always a few laughs. We're always enjoying the time that we have with one another, and we want you to be a part of that here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static. So go by the website, hit me right in the pocket, and let's make some magic here on Always Pneumatic, Never Static. You guys be safe out there, and we will see you again 5 a.m. next week, local time, for a new hour of content right from us here at APNS.
And that's all she blows for today's episode of Always Pneumatic, Never Static, your number one and probably only pneumatic trucking podcast, brought to you by Bulk Transit. Thanks for rolling with us today. Till next time, stay safe, keep those lines clear, and keep it pumping.